Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Hello there, this is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We seek to transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcast, please support this podcast with a donation or a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. If you're viewing any of the podcasts on YouTube, please subscribe. To supporters of this podcast, we say thank you. Check out my encouraging, inspiring, and transforming books that can be found on Amazon. I'm available for speaking engagements, in person and virtual seminars. So please contact me by Facebook, X, and or LinkedIn. I have with me Dorsey Ross, who has overcome numerous obstacles and trials. Throughout his journey, Dorsey endured bullying. He was subjected to derogatory terms such as monster and freak and underwent multiple surgeries. Despite doctors' limited prognosis and recommendations for institutionalization, Dorsey's parents, driven by their unwavering faith, placed their trust in God, believing he would transform Dorsey's life. What an awesome story, and I know you're going to enjoy this uh, interview as Dorsey share with us today. Um, Dorsey, good to have you come on the Deal by Me podcast. Would you tell us just a little about yourself and where you're located?
Yes, James, thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate being on your show. I am I am right now currently living in Westchester, PA, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia. But I'm originally from New York. I lived in Queens, New York, and then I lived out on Long Island. And I am 49 or 40, 48 years old.
Okay, now that's good. We're gonna share more about your life and what you have your journey, I should say. It's very interesting. Dorsey, I've read your profile, and I must say it's amazing what you have done and accomplished. And I'm certain you are going to be a great inspiration to listeners of this podcast. And so again, I'm just grateful that you chose to come on. Let me first of all ask you. I know that you have, I guess, the right pronunciation is Apert syndrome. Am I pronouncing that correct? APERT?
I pronounce it aplet syndrome.
Okay. Would you kind of share with listeners what that is and what it does to your body? Then we can
Yeah,
kind of get on into a little bit more of your story.
absolutely. Aplet syndrome is a congenital birth defect of the hands and the face. It's a very rare birth defect. It affects between 1 in approximately 100,000 births in the world. And when I was born, my forehead was pushed outward. My eyes and nose were pushed back into my head, and my fingers and toes were fused together, meaning I had no individual movement of them. And to this day, my toes are still fused together, though I can walk, I can run as best as I can. I can do, I drive, which a lot of people are surprised about. That's probably one of the, best questions I get, when I go and speak somewhere. They're like, how did you get here? I'm like, well, I drove. And they're like, you drive? Because my fingers are, they're like almost like stubby fingers, and they're not,
Okay.
full grown,
Right.
fingers like an adult has,
Okay.
because it's also a skeletal condition.
Okay.
And
Okay.
my bones, some of my bones and my certain parts of my body are not fully grown, or they're, um, I can't lift my hands above my head.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to when I was born, my parents would of an older age. My mom was 41, my dad was 45,
Right.
when they had me.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't know, that I was even going to be born with a birth defect, because back then I was born in 1977. So they didn't have the testing and the technology, like they do today, to
Right.
determine, the health of the baby and whatnot. And before my mom even knew she was pregnant, she thought she had a tumor growing inside of her.
Okay.
And she went to
Mm-hmm.
the doctor, and she's like, the doctor was like, well, it's not a tumor, but you are pregnant.
Okay.
And so when I was born, the doctors, rushed me
Mm-hmm.
off to examine me. Unlike most babies, when they're born, the doctors usually hand them off to the mother or to the father to hold the baby and whatnot. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and my dad were like, hey, what's going on? What's happening here? And when they wheeled me back into the room, my mom still did not see me, but I had raised my hand, and my mom saw that my hand was fused together, almost like a glove, with
Mm-hmm.
no fingers.
Mm.
And she said, well, if that's the only thing that's wrong with him, then we'll deal with it. Not realizing the fact that doctor wouldn't come in later on and say, hey, your son, his skull is also fused,
Oh
meaning I had
wow.
no sore
Mm-hmm.
spot to
Right.
allow the brain to grow and allow it to function
Okay.
normally.
Okay. Uh.
And because of that, the doctor said, well, we don't think he'll survive.
Okay.
Will
Uh,
eventually become, we think he'll eventually become brain dead. And the best option for you would be to put him into a institution.
okay. We're gonna get into that little more and let you share a little bit more. I want to just kind of make sure I get through some good points here as we're talking, so that our listeners can get a good feel for you. I assume that it's your faith, because I read something where your parents, had faith, and that they put your trust in God, and that they believe He would transform your life. Is is that how you felt? That you feel that your faith helped you through your life?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it definitely did.
Uh, oh,
And as we all know, life is not easy.
mm-hmm,
Life is not, is a difficult thing to go through and
mm-hmm,
to deal with. But yet, God and my faith in Christ were a very important role in helping me to get through those difficult times.
mm. You know, I'm sitting here just really so impressed with you sharing. Uh, I've had some difficult moments in my life. Mine was not physical as such, uh, but habits, gambling, and so forth, that just made me lose everything that I had accumulated. I was a lawyer for 10 years and lost my law practice. Served some time in prison, but then I came out, and of course, life was turned around. Started pastoring church. Just retired after 32 years of pastoring the same church. So I feel your story. So I want you to know you're talking to somebody who really feel you. Know how people can look at you and think about you in certain situations. And in your case, being a physical situation, uh, I would assume that there were a lot of people who were making fun of you. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, what are some of the things that happened? Were you in school when you were going to school or what have you?
Yeah, I went to a school for people with disabilities. You know,
Okay,
my parents found out about the school on Long Island that I mentioned earlier. I lived in Queens, New York, and went to school out on the island, and for people with disabilities.
right.
And in the school with people with disabilities, it wasn't. You would think that you know they'll all be loving and caring and supportive and everything, and that just wasn't the case.
Oh,
There was, and it was on the outside, of those walls as well, where people would and kids, would pick on me and stare at me and point at me, and they, as we talked about before the show started, they would call me names like monster and freak,
right, right.
and that would hurt. Obviously,
Wow,
that would
wow.
sting.
Now, were they going through some of the same challenges that were you going through, and they still did that?
Yeah, I mean, they were. I mean, these were, people who, I mean, at least in the school that I went to,
Hmm.
they were, people who dealt with physical, disabilities and physical challenges as well.
Wow, I'm just amazed, Darcy, by your story, and I love the fact that you have chosen to share it. Uh, I take it that you have written a book.
I,
Is that book based upon your life story?
it is.
Okay, then what inspired you to write your book?
I I mean, before 2020 happened, like you had mentioned that you're available for speaking as well. I used to go around and speak and share my story, and now I kind of slowed down with that. My
Hmm.
dad, 93 now, so I've been trying to take
Right.
care of him. And for years and years and years, people would say to me, "Hey, you should write a book. You should write a book. You should
Okay.
write a book."
Right.
And I had no idea, where to start, who to
Okay.
contact,
Okay.
how did that all process all, work out.
Hmm.
And so I finally, started to research some of that. And, I came out with the first edition back in 2016. And then I did a remake of it with a little additional added on in 2020, where
Okay.
I just went directly to Amazon, have my editor and whatnot.
Right.
But I went
Right.
to Amazon and put it through their system. That way, we're not paying thousands of dollars for a
Right.
publisher
Right.
to.
Yeah, I understand. That because that's the same way I've written my books. I've written three, and I've done them the same way. So I know what you're talking about. Amazon makes it really easy for you.
Yeah.
Uh, so, you know, uh, I want to just know a little bit more about you. Do you have goals, or if you do, what are some of the goals for your life? I know you've written a book. There must be some other stuff that you're thinking about you want to do or to share. And I gather that you are, you go around doing inspiration and speaking. Uh, is this partly about where you want to go and what you want to do, or is there something else that you are thinking about?
Well, right now I don't really know where I want to go. I
Okay.
hope to, that the podcast starts to take off a little
Hmm.
bit more and, grow that a little bit, and
Okay.
where that goes. Like I said, my dad's older age, I'm trying to
Right.
take care of him. And one of my goals outside of podcasting and speaking, it's not really a goal. I think it's a desire for everybody, regardless of disability or non-disabled people, is to get married. To find that woman of God that he has for me.
Wow, wow. You're exciting. I'm very impressed with you, Dorsey. I want you to know that you touch my spirit, and I just love having individuals like you on my podcast because it's about encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. So let me ask you this. I didn't say this to you in the beginning, but I want I know you're able to do it. If there are individuals who are listening to this podcast who are going through some similar challenges, they may not, have the physical uh, challenge that you have, but they may be going through some other things in their lives. Uh, it could be in the case of what I was doing, gambling and going through depression and mental states of feeling low. What would you say to them that will be encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming? Do you have a word that you could share?
Yeah, I think I would just say know that God has a plan and purpose for
Oh,
your life
mm,
first and foremost, and that God loves you and
mm,
that God cares for you and that He wants to see the best that He has for you. And to know that as I said earlier, life is not an easy thing to deal with and
mm,
to go through. I had to deal with the thought of ending my own life and to
mm-hmm,
wanting to hearing voices, not the enemy and whatnot, in my own life saying,
mm-hmm,
hey,
mm, mm.
and
But
end your own life. It's not worth it. It's not, but
right,
don't
right.
listen to those voices in your head. Don't listen
Oh,
to
I,
those desires that are keeping you away from what God has for you.
I love that. I was going to ask you about that. Because a lot of times when people are going through some situations in their lives, they just feel depression gets in. A whole lot of other things start coming into the minds, and you just talked about voices. And I was going to ask you, did you ever think about ending your life, and how did you overcome those thoughts?
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to my faith. It
Okay,
goes back to my faith and it goes back to my relationship, with Christ.
okay.
And, thankfully, I never, attempted it. I
Mm,
never, ever picked up anything or ever,
right.
never took any type of medication to
Oh
try to
wow.
do that
Oh,
because, it was almost like like the saying go, the battlefield is in your mind, you know,
oh, wow.
and God always won. God's victorious in the
Wow.
end anyway, but God always won that battle for
Mm,
me because He always reminded me, hey, I have a greater plan and greater purpose for your life. Don't give up.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You're amazing. I just love it. It's oh boy. I'm sitting here just all filled because I feel your stories so much, you know, because it's a reminder of how you can come back. I've had to do it myself, and and constantly still facing things, but you go through it. You move through it. Listeners, don't go in a place. I'm sharing here with Dorsey Ross, and he's given us some very good information that I think is going to be really great for you. So I want to ask Dorsey now if he would tell us how we can learn more about him, uh, how we can get his book, and if he can give us the title of his book, uh, so that people who would be interested know how to do this. Would you do that for us now, Darcy?
Sure. Can I share one other thing before I do that? Would
Yeah,
that be
sure,
okay?
sure.
I also had a learning disability. So I didn't always do well in school.
Yeah,
You know.
I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to that. Yeah, I'm not finished with you yet.
Well, anyway, you can contact me on all my social media, Instagram, Facebook, even now on TikTok. Depending on how long that lasts for. And my book is on Amazon. It's called Overcomer: Discovering God's Plan Against All Odds.
Oh, okay. Wow. Overcoming, discovering God's plan against all odds. I love
Right.
it. Okay. Love it. Love it. Oh, I love it. That's beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'll let you at the end uh, give us the title of that book one more time so I make sure
Okay.
everybody gets it. Now, I didn't want to leave all of this, so I want to ask you, well, what are some of the hardest things you've had to face?
Yeah. Well, besides the bullying and being made fun of, it would
Mhm.
have to be the struggle to learn and
Okay.
the struggle to understand certain things, especially when I was younger in school and in high school and different things of that nature because of the
Mhm.
operations I wasn't always in school. I
Right.
had to deal with 68 operations over my lifetime up until about my mid teen years, and so that was a big struggle for me.
Mhm.
And so as I got older, as we all do, we have desires of what we want to do after we graduate,
Mhm.
whatnot.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so one of my desires was to go on to college
Okay.
and try to I have all these things in my head of what I wanted to do. At one point we can do nursing, do computer, something in computers and different things of that nature. And we had to have an IEP meeting at the end of my senior year of high school to discuss, hey, where's the Dorsey gonna go, what's he gonna do.
Mhm.
And my mom was there. My mom and my dad were always big supporters of me. My mom, unfortunately, she passed away in 2002.
Mhm.
And like I said, my dad's still alive. My dad's still a big supporter of me, allows me
Mm.
to go out and figure out what I can and cannot do. And can't is not in my vocabulary.
Mm.
I don't
I,
use that. I don't use that word very often.
oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So,
So in this meeting, my mom was there, and you know, they
mhm.
were, they had asked me, what do you think? Oh, excuse me, they had asked the high school history teacher, do you think that Dorsey will be able to make it in college?
Mm.
And his response was, no, I don't think that Dorsey will be able to make it
Mm.
in college. I don't think he has the ability to make it
Mm.
in college. And then they asked me,
Mhm.
and I said, yeah, I think I can make it, you know.
Oh, I love it. I
And
love
then
it.
they asked my mom, and she said, well, if Dorsey thinks he can make it, he will.
Mm.
And make a long story short, went on to community college, struggled there a little bit, found out that they had a Bible study there, once a week,
Mhm.
went there. I still struggled, but I had a support group of people that I knew would support me. I knew would encourage me on that on that campus. And then, a few years later, I started to even in youth group when I was growing up, I would go to the youth group,
Mhm.
and I towards the end of 18, 19, 20, started to feel a call of God in my life to become a youth
Minister.
pastor.
Mhm. Okay.
And so I went on to Bible college,
Mm.
and so I went to what is now the University of Valley Forge here in Pennsylvania, and I had to do another associate's degree because I was struggling there as well. But again, on May 5th, 2005, I crossed the stage to
Oh my
receive
God.
my
I
bachelor's
love
arts
it.
degree in youth ministry.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Dorsey, you almost make me cry. I just love your story. You are so genuine and just so amazing. It's just great. It's just great. How did you become this evangelist? And does what you I think I heard you say you felt this call on your life, and so are you working with youth now, or is there something else you're doing with your life?
Well, as I said, for about 17 years, from 2005 to a little, well, even 2022, 2023, even last year, I did a little traveling, evangelism.
Okay.
But how it started was after I graduated Bible college, I would go on interview after interview, and they never really put me past, the first part of the interview
I understand.
process to become a youth pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And I even had this one pastor say to me, "Hey, we're not going to look at your disability, but you know, we'll just look at what your resume and what you've done and whatnot, and we'll see if what you if we're a good fit, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll bring
Right.
you on for the next
Mm-hmm.
part of the process." And that never even worked out.
I know.
But then when I went home back to New York, I started attending another church, and it was a church where I knew people already. I knew the the young adult pastor, youth pastor. I knew him. I knew the senior pastor, who was there,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that they would, you know, support me and encourage me in whatever ministry God had for me.
Mm-hmm.
They would support me, and they gave me an opportunity to share my story
Oh,
at
okay.
an outreach event in the summertime called Summerfest. And during that time, I was praying about, what's next for me in ministry, in my
Mm-hmm.
life, whatnot. And I just felt like the Holy Spirit say to me, hey, you know, send this video out of what you just made and see what I will do with it.
Mm.
And, for like I said, for the last 16, 17 years, that's what I've been doing.
Oh, wow. Wow. Dorsey, this has been a joy talking to you. Let me ask you this my last question here. What's the highlight of your life so far? Can you just tell listeners a little bit about, some of the your basic highlight,
Yeah,
because I know there's got to be something that you just excited about.
I think, graduating college, obviously,
Okay.
that's a
Okay.
highlight.
Right.
Starting my own podcast,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
and I started that actually on a whim, because somebody
Okay.
interviewed me for their podcast, and I was like, "Hey,
Okay.
this is fun. Let me see what this whole thing is about."
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing that now for almost 5 years now,
Okay. Okay. Are you, are,
and
you- are you enjoying it?
I am,
Oh, good.
I am
Good.
enjoying it.
Good. Okay. Okay. Dorsey, thank you so very much. You've been a great guest, and I've just enjoyed talking with you. Your life is so amazing and very impressive with what you've done, and your attitude toward life and your faith. It's just overwhelming to me, and I'm just grateful that you chose to come on the Deal by Me podcast. Okay,
Thank you,
so
James.
so there you have it. Dorsey Ross sharing his story with us today. And until next time, peace and blessings be with each of you.